Hello, YouTube-ites. It is time for my November comics review. I think I must have went a little too early in the month because we have no G.I. Joe and no Transformers. Now, G.I. Joe, all the little sub-series they had on all the characters like Deathstroke, Cobra Commander, Duke, and Scarlet, those 5-issue series have all ended. So, really, as far as I know, it's just still the regular ongoing one that's still going on. So it was just the one issue that hadn't come out yet, and same thing for Transformers. So I was a touch early, but I found something special to fill the gap, and let's look at it right now. It is an Alien Romulus one-shot prequel issue. Because I only had a few issues when I showed up, I just looked around for anything interesting, and as soon as I saw this and saw that it was a one-shot Alien comic prequel to Romulus, I was like, okay, I'm getting this for sure. It's not something I'm going to have to continue buying over the coming months. It's just a one-shot, and you know how much I love aliens. So basically this issue sets up the start of Romulus after the little kind of brief cutscene that happens at the start of the movie. So if you haven't seen Alien Romulus yet, there is a brief scene at the start of the movie, which if you go back and watch one of my review videos, I talk about this. 20 years after the original Alien movie took place, and the Nostromo was all blown apart, and Ripley was the lone survivor, and the alien was blasted out into space or whatever. The Weyland-Yutani, 20 years later, sends an expedition to go find this alien amongst the wreckage of the Nostromo. They end up finding an alien all encapsulated in like a big block of resin. So they bring it into the ship, and then the movie fast forwards a little bit later, once the lab that they take this alien to, the people in Romulus try to flee to it to get some cryo chambers, or not cryo chambers, some sleep chambers, and find the station has been, well, all hell broke loose on it apparently. So this issue kind of shows what happens after that crew brings the block of resin containing the alien back to that station. So what happens is Rook, the science officer that looks just like Ash from the original movie, he kind of leads the expedition and the extrication of the alien from this resin, and they're doing all these tests on it and stuff like that. They're talking about Prometheus fire and acid for blood, and they're doing all these tests and experiments. But there's two security officers, I guess. I don't think they're Colonial Marines. I think they're just security for Weyland-Yutani on the station with all these scientists. And the one girl, Hyla, and her friend Adrian, the other security officer, she wears an eye patch, and she's kind of scarred by what she sees going on because she has had run-ins with the aliens before. I think just the facehuggers, not the full-grown xenomorphs. But she has had experience with these aliens before and is like, we need to get this fucking thing out of here. Like, I don't think it's dead. I think it's just in hibernation, and it's biding its time until it's time to have a feast or whatever, right? So her friend Adrian is like, okay, I believe you. Like, what do we do? So meanwhile, Rook is performing all these experiments in the lab and doing all this research. So they set up a plan to jettison the alien on like a rocket and blow it up in space. But as they're in the process of doing this, the alien must sense danger. He wakes up, and in typical alien fashion, the thing runs amok amongst the station and basically kills everybody. And it looks like Hyla might survive in the end, but even she gets blasted into space and is assumingly lost because humans can't survive in the vacuum of space. So we kind of see how the station is left like we see it in the movie, with the alien that gets kind of the xenomorph that escapes and kills everybody. In the movie, we see its remains after it dies during all this fracas, kind of strung up on all these cables and stuff like that. So that's kind of how the issue closes. We see everybody die, we see Rook all torn apart, and we see the alien all tied up in all the cables, and that kind of leads right into that main part of the Romulus movie after the initial expedition picks up the alien. So really cool issue. It wasn't very long. It was just straight and to the point. This is what happened. There's lots of action, and it's really cool to see the artwork in these Alien comic books, because I got to imagine it's hard to draw them just because they're so dark. They're so black and dark and shiny. I would imagine that would be a very difficult thing to put down on paper and get to look right. But once again, these people are infinitely more talented than me, and it makes me very fucking jealous. Last month, the Void Rivals series, I wasn't able to get a new issue of that, but there was one waiting for me this month, and it is issue 13. And I feel like this storyline is getting very close to done. And there's a lot of different things going on in this issue. It starts with, I can't remember, Globulus from G.I. Joe. He was aligned with Cobra, but he was like a big weird snake guy, and we see him pissed off at one of his underlings, Pythona, about not being able to capture the Cybertronians or something like that. So they're after, like, I think Springer, and maybe they were after Jetfire as well. I don't know, but so she takes some of her charges and heads to the wasteland where Salila and Derek had been and met up with Springer and all that to go in search of Springer. And in the meantime, we see what's happening with the two of them after they parted ways. Salila was given the Handroid device by Derek for her journey, and she's traveling into the ring of the planet to try and find Zerta. Now, we know from previous issues that these Agorians and Zertonians have those little shards in their head that allow them to basically consume energon and use that as a power source. And that Zerta was actually Zerta Trion, so obviously some sort of Cybertronian being, and that's where Salila is going. She's going in search of Zerta to get some answers, and her and Handroid are climbing down through all this mechanical rat's nest in the middle of the ring in the middle of the planet, and going in search of Zerta. And we don't see her have any luck by the end of the issue, but that's kind of basically her journey through this issue number 13. In the meantime, Derek is traveling inside of Springer, and they are going to Agoria, which is Derek's people. And so Springer drops him off at the edge of the city, and Derek enters the city and is immediately recognized and noticed, and he's taking to the, I don't know, the highest leaders of the people there. And his father is the one that confronts him and says, "So where's your Zertonian friend?" Oh, he's like, "You know about her?" and blah blah blah. And he's like, "Of course we do. You know, we've been tracking you the whole time, trying to get you to stop this fool errand. Like, this path to unity between our two people is not the answer. It's actually going to mean our destruction." Now, he doesn't really go into any details on why that is, and I don't think Derek really believes him, but there's all these different thoughts on what this unity process is going to bring about. So there's all these ancient texts talking about unity and how it's bad, how it's going to do all these things, but there's others that believe that's the opposite. It was just written by a bunch of fear-mongering people to keep their people apart for whatever reason. And we also see Skuxoid delivering, I think, the metal sample or whatever it is to that guy that he was working for. And Skuxoid has basically lost all faith in the process and whatever. He's like, "Pay me, don't pay me, here's your sample," whatever, right? So that was just a brief little scene. And then the other thing that's going on as well is two powerful people on Zertonia. I don't know if she's a priestess or something like that, and he's one of the higher ranking members of the Zertonian Council, or however the hell it works. But she's talking to him about what's going on, and he's talking about unity. It's going to be our downfall and stuff like that. And she's basically like, backhands him. And she's like, "You need to learn the truth and whatever." And so I have a feeling that she is in favor of unity, much like Derek and Salila are, whereas all these other people aren't. So I feel there's a lot of revelations that are going to be coming soon. Like, are they going to find this Zertatrion transformer? And if so, what does he or she look like? Is it somebody we actually know as another transformer, and this is just the mythology of this being? And is Unity actually good? Is it actually bad? Or is it good for some people, bad for the other? Like, I want to know the truth behind, what exactly is this Unity? What does it mean? And what's going to happen between these two people that seem so closely linked, but have been led to hate each other for so long, right? So I can't wait to see how this thing all wraps up. I think if it is wrapping up soon, I think we have at least 2 more issues to go, maybe 3. But I just get the feeling that we're on the verge of some answers and some conclusion to this story. And I can't wait for the end. I mean, I don't want the end to come because it's so fun to read. But I want to know the truth, man. I want to know the truth. Okay, to finish this comics review off, we got 3 issues of Ninja Turtles. The first 2 being the continuation of the Saturday Morning Adventures series, which I didn't get any last month, so I thought maybe it was over. I didn't remember how exactly the last one ended, but then I found the last 2 that I had missed. So we got issue 17 and issue 18, and this is actually a back-to-back issues that actually are linked. It's a 2 issues overall kind of story. So it starts off with April O'Neil reporting outside the New York Museum of Natural Science and History or something like that. She's talking to a person that works at the museum who is a specialist in like Egyptology, because the museum had just recently had an old relic that had been found dug up from the desert in Egypt. It had been donated to the museum, and it's everybody's waiting for it to be unveiled. But we learn after this interview, when this person goes back into the museum and has a phone conversation with one of her colleagues, that they're having problems with this relic because they assemble it and they put it out on display every night. Like, okay, we're ready to go. Let's open the display up. But in the morning, it's been disassembled. It's not been stolen. It's not been broken. All the pieces are there. It's just simply disassembled again the next morning, and it keeps happening every day. So Mona Lisa, the mutant lizard that is friends with the turtles, drops in on this person because this person used to teach her when she was at school, and so she introduces herself as her former student, who is now a mutant, and asks if she could help in any way, and the person is like, well, the museum's making cutbacks, so we have no security cameras, we have no security devices, we have no security guards, so we don't know what's happening at night with this device. So Mona Lisa is like, well, I'll stay and I'll monitor and we'll see what's going on. In the meantime, she calls the turtles, but the turtles, Raphael broke one of Donatello's devices and got in trouble from Splinter. So while Splinter and Leo and Donnie and Mikey are going to some sort of food festival, Raph has been kind of grounded essentially and told to stay home, clean the lair, and he's only allowed to do patrols. He can't go out for any fun until he helps Donatello repair his device. But Mona Lisa gets in touch with Raph at least and says, I need help. So Raph is like, well, I'll write him a note. I'm not going to eat pizza. I'm going to help a friend, right? So he goes, and so they're staking out the museum, and suddenly they see a mummy coming down the hallway, and they're like, oh, is this the thing that's causing all this problem with the relic? So Raph immediately jumps to conclusions and attacks this mummy, and so Mona Lisa has to join in as well, but the mummy keeps kind of foiling their efforts to destroy him. And eventually the mummy kind of wraps them up in bandages and explains himself. So he's actually a mutant named Bakari, who lived in ancient Egypt and was the assistant to an Egyptian scientist who wasn't very competent at being a scientist. And this scientist was named Ptah or something like that. Excuse me. And so he explains that one day when him and Ptah were out in the desert, they saw this kind of rift in the sky. And through it, they could see this weird battle going on. And it was the Turtles and Shredder and Krang. And during the battle, a can of mutagen got knocked away, and it came through the portal, and it hit both Bakari and Ptah, and turned them into mutants. Bakari into the Mummy Man, and Ptah into this basically crocodile-looking thing that looks a lot like Leatherhead, except his brain is kind of exposed in this weird kind of jar. It's strange, and becoming a mutant actually gave him extra powers so that Ptah could actually do good work and be a competent scientist. So he built this device, which is the relic that was given to the museum, and it basically, he uses it to capture all of his enemies and store them away. So what happened was they were able to turn the tide on Ptah and actually capture him inside his own device. Now, the reason Bakari keeps disassembling it every night is because if the device is left together for too long a length of time, Ptah will automatically be released. And same thing if somebody tries to destroy it, he'll be automatically released. So the only way to keep him from coming back out into the real world and keep him trapped in this device is just to keep it disassembled at all times. So that's all he's trying to do. Now, in the meantime, taking all this time to explain this to Raph and Mona Lisa, Ptah has actually escaped from the device because it's been set up for too long in the museum. And he's like, you guys are fucked, right? So Raph and Mona Lisa and the Mummy Man, Bakari, now have to fight Ptah on their own. So while that whole process is starting, the Turtles and Splinter get back to the lair and they find the note Raph left, and they're like, shit, which museum is it? So they go off in the Turtle Blimp and they're looking around trying to find him. And eventually they do when there's a commotion and one of the walls gets blown out at the museum. So basically that second issue is mostly just a fight between all the Turtles, Mona Lisa and Bakari, against Ptah and his device, which is capable. Actually, he has a second device that is capable of doing some magical things, which he uses to kind of screw over these heroes that are trying to do him in, sort of thing. But eventually, they do trick him. They find a way to beat him and get the drop on him. So eventually, they get him arrested and he's taken to, they call it Spiker's prison. So I think it's supposed to be like Rikers or whatever. So as issue 18 is closing off, we hear Ptah, we see him in his cell, like, lamenting, "Oh, you goddamn turtles, when I get out of here, your ass is grass." And then we see from the cell next to him, and he's like, there's somebody in the other cell, and they're like, "Oh, so you don't like the turtles?" And he's like, "We're going to become really good friends, me and you." And it's the Rat King, who has been stuck in prison since whenever that kind of last battle with the Rat King unfolded earlier in the Saturday Morning Adventures series. So very cool couple of issues. I like the Egyptian theme. I like the mummy. I like the big crocodile. I like the fact that the Rat King is being hinted at, that he's going to maybe get involved again. Two really good issues. Now the last thing I have is issue 3 of the regular ongoing Turtles series. So as they rebooted the Turtles after issue 150 a while back, the first issue focused on Raphael. Remember, he was in prison and he was kind of working for the warden about keeping the place kind of clean and everything running smoothly with the prisoners and stuff. And then in the second issue, remember, it was Mikey, who's now a television star in Tokyo and whatever, and we know there's been some animosity between all the brothers. So the third issue here was focused on Leonardo. So as it opens up, he's in India and he's been there for a while, and he is kind of hanging out on the banks of the Ganges River. Apparently there's turtles there that have developed a taste for human flesh, because in this area they have funerals all the time in the river where they send out the half-burned remains of the dead person into the river. So the turtles end up eating them and have become kind of man-eaters, basically. But they don't kill the people, they just eat the remains and clean them up, sort of thing. So Leonardo feels like there's something to be learned from these turtles, so he hangs out on the banks of the Ganges trying to commune with these turtles. And whether they actually are capable of teaching him things on purpose or not, eventually he does learn a couple of lessons, and eventually he's also attacked by Foot Clan soldiers, just like Mikey was in the second issue, and he finally sees his purpose, what his next step should be. So then he gets on a helicopter and heads to Tokyo, Japan. So it shifts to Tokyo, and we see Mikey and Raph fighting each other, like at the end of the second issue, Mikey's issue. That's what kind of started, and as the Foot Clan soldiers had attacked Mikey and drugged him, Raph came in to try and help him, but Mikey's pissed at Raph. So they're kind of fighting each other, where they're also trying to fend off these foot soldiers. And eventually the Foot Clan sends a helicopter crashing into Mikey's apartment, and things are all blown up and shit. And that's when Leo is like, guys, stop fighting each other, like, for fuck's sake. There's trouble. Have you noticed the Foot Clan is after all of us now? And Mikey's like, fuck off, I can deal with them on my own. You're not my brothers anymore. So I can't wait to hear the full story of why they're all so pissed off at each other. But Leo's like, Mikey, it's not about us. It's not about you. The Foot Clan's going after Donnie next. That's who they really want. And that's kind of how the issue ends, as we see Donatello, I think, in a prison cell, just kind of sitting there like whatever. So it looks like the three brothers are going to go try and save Donatello from whatever fate might be in store for him with the Foot Clan. So we've kind of seen what Raph, Mikey, and Leonardo have been up to leading up to this point in the story. So issue 4 in December, we'll see exactly what Donnie's situation is, and see what happens when the four brothers, the Fearsome Foursome, are all reunited. Can't wait.
Meow.